this is an appeal to those of you who are watching. I really want to have you listen and watch and think about this. Now, any of you that may have seen my videos in the past, any of my videos, I'm like a one-trick pony. I don't seem to vary a lot in what I do. And I'm trying to carry a message to people, particularly young people. I'm an ORG, an old retired guy. So you're saying, what possible, anything of value do I have to share with you? You're 20, you're hip, you know, you're busy, you're out there doing your thing, building a career, making money. Okay, I understand all that. But there's going to be some of you, many of you have already checked out of this video. You're gone, you're on to the next silly pet video. But some of you are going to stay here. Here's the ones that I think need to stay here. You ready? It's those of you who have been polluted up here. Polluted up here in the brain. You've taken in like a great big cosmic suction pump. All of the stuff that you hear, you learn, you hear in the media, you hear from your teachers at school about one thing: evolution. The design of the universe, the design of this world, how it all just sort of popped in by chance. What is chance? Chance is nothing. Chance isn't a thing, but they have made a god out of chance. This video, and I hope this one might lead you to some of my others where we get a little bit more involved in metaphysical topics. Don't run away, that's not such a scary word. Meta means beyond. Physical means physical. So metaphysical means something beyond the physical. Do you think there's anything beyond the physical world in which you live? Is there anything sort of out there? Could there be other dimensions beyond this universe? All of that. And even scientists, even secular atheistic scientists are saying, you know, it seems to be something more than what we can see in the photons, neutrons, electrons, and the elementary particles of this universe, and the way it came out of a big bang, of something that just sort of exploded out of, then they say, nothing. Well, there's a lot more beyond that. So we're going to just begin to touch on that in this video. It's worth an investment of a few minutes. Just think for a few minutes, okay? That's my challenge. That's my invitation, more than a challenge. It's an invitation to you.
The following is a baffling conundrum to the evolutionist. Purposed and directed information exchange, orchestrating specific and intended functioning within a cell, is continuously conducted within the human genome and the DNA-RNA functions that make up the human genome. As you probably know, the genome is the complete set of genetic material for any given living organism.
DNA, RNA, coding, programmed, embedded complex information? Man, how does anyone ever get from there to mindless evolution from chance? I've got to wonder if many evolutionary scientists almost have made chance their god. Well, let's back up for a second. You know, sometimes you just get swept up or driven along in your daily grind. Maybe you call it weekend craziness or internet obsessions and forget about something that's really huge. What is it? It's called life, and why you and I are even here on this tiny planet in a tiny corner of a galaxy filled with billions of other suns, embedded in a vast universe containing maybe trillions of other galaxies. And then looking as we are at this short video, at the miracle of life itself, at the tiny sub-microscopic level. I don't see really how we can be anything but totally amazed. It's staggering just how much information is programmed into this tiny, mind-numbingly complex directors of life called DNA. Amazing, isn't it? Well, then you have a guy who is said to be a well-respected scientist, in addition to being an avowed atheist, who once said, "Science is filling in the gaps, and eventually there will be no need for God." Really, this to me is the vain promise and hope of atheism. Let's see if it has actually come true yet, and look at the very important breakthrough for modern science research. You know, even forgetting for a minute what the book of Genesis tells us, scientists all agree that at one time, when the earth was very young, there was no life here. Today, of course, there is a staggering vast amount of life, all types and all descriptions. So there must have been a point in time at which life began on what they call a pre-biological, or in other words, a totally inorganic planet. As we think about this, let's make it as simple as possible for life to occur, shall we? Consider, for example, the simplest possible cell. Well, first, let's consider, certainly, to be the foundation of all life, it would need something called a genome, which is defined as either DNA or RNA. This directs the activity of the cell. All aspects of life, such as respiration, food intake, even waste elimination. The genome also guides the critically important and complex issue of reproduction, or what they call cell division, as a living cell reproduces more of its own kind. But the vital first requirement is that the genome must contain all of the necessary information to direct these processes right from the very beginning. Wow! This clinches it for many of us, and new scientific discoveries like this have dragged many scientists, well, some kicking and screaming, from a confident, often arrogant denial of a super intelligent supreme designer to a much more humble acknowledgement of the eternal designer's necessary existence. Getting a little more complex, but so someone like me can still get it, there are several huge hurdles in trying to quote and unquote build the very first cell. For example, how would the 4 bases that must be present chemically bond to something called a phosphate diribose chain, and in the precisely exact specific order as required by the genetic code? This must happen in order for the genetic code to perform its function of directing the life of the cell, and then be reproduced for cell division. It's been estimated that the life genome would need approximately 500,000 of something called nucleotide bases. A nucleotide is the basic structural unit and building block for DNA. These building blocks are all hooked together to form the chain of DNA. This is mind-boggling beyond our primitive comprehension. The pre-programmed coded assembly of cells happens with very complex structural parts like these. The nucleotides make up the basic building blocks of nucleic acids. The programmed instructions built into these incredible life building blocks cause them to stack one upon another, which leads directly to the long chain-like structures such as RNA, DNA. Did these exist on a pre-biological Earth? Good question. Well, maybe a few by chance somehow did, or somewhere did, but there is a vast number of other bases beyond the 4 that are found in the genomes of all life. They would have been all jumbled and mixed together. And anyway, why would those critically important special 4 be present in any significant degree in the soup? Evolutionary science offers us only a deafening silence here. would you like to try to bake a cake that had a recipe with millions of different ingredients? Well, think, that would be a little tough. What if you had to go to millions of different stores buying one ingredient at each store? That would be a lot simpler than trying to randomly assemble even the most simple and basic single-celled animal from some supposed prebiotic soup. But science offers no answer to how this could happen by random, mindless chance. So, the assembly of life by random chance is as likely as the most complex supercomputer we have on Earth being assembled over billions of years if enough tornadoes were to spin through an electronic junkyard and ta-da! Eventually, there would be a pre-programmed, immensely complex machine like a Cray supercomputer. So hey, let's just sum it up this way. The information needed by this life genome is staggering, mind-boggling, and it's complex. And to be blunt, by chance, it just flat couldn't and didn't happen.
Just like a computer program, the genetic code is full of if and end-if statements. Each decision makes it more specialized. DNA is not simply a computer programming language, but as you have already seen, there are some startling analogies between DNA and computer code. We can view each cell as a CPU, or a central processing unit, running its own kernel. As you probably know, in computing, the kernel is the main component of most computer operating systems. It's a bridge between applications and the actual data processing done at the hardware level. So each cell has a copy of the entire kernel. But amazingly, each cell chooses to activate only the relevant parts, which modules or which driver it loads, so to speak. If a cell needs to do something or call a function, it calls up the right piece of the genome and transcribes it into RNA. The RNA is then translated into a sequence of amino acids, which together make up a protein for which the DNA coded. Now for the truly amazing part of the equation. This called up and coded protein is then tagged with a shipping address. This address is a marker consisting of several amino acids which tells the rest of the cell where this particular protein needs to be deployed. The amazing and complex intelligent communication functions of DNA are myriad.
Where did the information come from? And I call this the information enigma. And this is where intelligent design comes in, because what we know from our experience, from our uniform and repeated experience, whether we're looking at a hieroglyphic inscription or a paragraph in a book, information embedded in a radio signal, whenever we see information, especially in a digital or alphabetic form, and we trace it back to its source, we always come to a mind, not a material process. And we're arguing that in the case of the origin of life, there was a master programmer responsible for the information that makes life possible.